Thing's roaring. Now, the first rule is that anytime you're gonna go out and do something like this, make sure you let people know where you're going. So I got that covered. Then, most important thing is your clothing. Plenty of layers and the right clothing. I am stacked right now. I have my 3 layers. I have a long sleeve thermal shirt. I have a wool sweater, and I have this big winter jacket. I also have thermal pants, thermal underwear, a pair of cargo pants, a pair of snow pants. I also got 2 pairs of gloves. I got heavy duty socks, big old boots, mini spikes on them so I don't slip. So I got my three layers covered, make sure my head's protected, and I have all the items that I need on me in a survival situation in case I got separated from my bag. So I got my knife on me, a ferro rod and whatnot. Gotta try to find the right spot. It's tricky when there's snow everywhere, so let's see what we can do. So I don't have a lot of time to waste with it being the winter time. The sun goes down about 4:30. So I need to build myself a shelter that can help me survive in the winter like this, and get a fire going. Those are my 2 main priorities, or else I would really be in big trouble. It's very dangerous being out here, especially alone, so I made sure that I brought all of the necessary things that I think most people should bring with them if they're ever going to go out to the wilderness like this. Don't listen to people kind of making fun of you and saying you're overdoing it. I also brought a foghorn because this is bear country. There's a myth about bears hibernating. You see, grizzly bears hibernate. Black bears don't hibernate the same way. They actually are a little more active, especially if they're hungry. So, all right. I definitely need to build a bed here for sure. So that may be the first, one of the first things that I do. This is a winter survival situation. So having a tarp is huge. I'm gonna need to boil water, so I got myself a pan. Got my machete, hatchet. This is extremely important in this situation because of all the snow. I consider this to be a vital thing to bring because otherwise it would be much harder for me to get a shelter going and clear out the ground. So shovel, very important, and a handsaw as well. I'll clear it up a little more, but I wanted enough length from my body to lay across and enough room for me to start a fire. So it will look a little cleaner in the future. Getting. I'm keeping in mind how quickly the sun goes down. So I'm doing this as kind of fast as I can so that way I can move on to getting the tarp set up, getting a little bit of shelter and getting a fire. So this is more of a situation where I can always make things better if I was here long term, but we're just thinking about surviving the night, knowing that you're gonna stay here, and you cannot be on this ground. Even a whole bunch of pine boughs, I wouldn't feel too comfortable about it. So I'm gonna end up putting a whole bunch of pine boughs and everything like that, debris over this. And then I'll be off the ground more. Make sure you use hardwood or live wood. You don't want these little dead pieces to just crack on you. There we go. Okay. We already have at least enough to sit down on, so that's looking good. However, we still need more. I can literally see the sun moving west. I am not being precise with the lengths because I would die if I only had this by the time the sun went down. So for time purposes, I'm not going to go through the whole thing or show the entire segment, but I'm going to cut a few more pieces. I'm going to use some paracord to tie this off, and over time I could improve it, make it all more sturdy, but I have the main layout for a bed. Then I got to get some more materials because my back would still be hurting up on that. Really need to get this stuff going and a fire because it gets darker in the woods quicker than when you're not. So now I gotta utilize this tarp. I'm gonna build somewhat of a lean-to. I'm gonna tie this to these two trees with some paracord. Nice thing about a bed too is that you have a place to put your tools. I found this little part that I was able to kind of lay the branch on. I don't care if this is perfectly straight. I have it tied, it's secure. It's going to be able to hold some branches on the back side of it, and then I can lay my tarp down. I'm tying clove hitches to these that are going across. That's too small. I'm not doing things perfectly. When it comes to time, you just have to do what you have to do in order to get yourself shelter, to keep yourself off the ground, to get yourself warm. So I got this set up and I'm going to put the tarp over it. It gives a little bit more structure. You can run out of time. And that's the problem. Okay? You don't want to run out of time. This out of the way. Got ice sticking in my beard. See, I may not feel cold now because I've been moving around, but if I didn't have a fire or shelter and stop, I'd freeze. I got some bedding. And I scored actually a big, huge piece of birch that can just kind of assist with some of the windbreak. Pick myself up right here. Really isn't going to do too much, but it'll help just a little bit. Some of the air. I got enough bedding for now. It's not the best type of bedding that you can use, but it's actually pretty comfy. I took a bunch of brush and branches and I put it in between this live branch and the tent, so that way that wind that you probably hear that's messing up the audio maybe will prevent the tent from going up, and just add just the tiniest bit of insulation, not much. It just, you know, cushions it up. Now I'm gonna get to a fire. I really need a fire, and I need a belt, man. So I got this going, but it was a little difficult because it's wet out here. Birch burns great even when it's wet, but I had my stuff ready. It's tough to find firewood in these parts. So the next step would end up being putting a bunch of pine boughs and brush along the back side and the side walls in there. I can see the gaps right there. And then I would kind of build a wall to create a windbreak from here along there, so that way it keeps me warm and protects me even more from the wind. It's getting cold. I definitely got a fire going at the perfect time. Wow, what a difference. I love it. I'll have a little bit more time to strengthen this bed and to cover up the walls and everything, but I would feel a lot better if I was in a survival situation with this setup as opposed to nothing. But what I learned, and what I have been learning, is that things take a lot longer than you imagine. So if you find yourself in a situation where you need to build a shelter, you want it done as early as possible, because nothing's scarier than having the sun go down and you don't have a shelter or you don't have a good setup. Next thing you know, you're afraid of dying. I'm gonna need to gather a lot of firewood, and it's way more difficult to gather firewood, of course, in the wintertime in the mountains with all the snow. But I gotta get that going and then continue working on this. That's a little better. Stone's roaring.